Hi, this is Terry Farrell, Dax from Deep Space Nine, and welcome to Random Trek.
Hello everyone, Brennan Marr here. The episode you are about to hear is our discussion of the 1987 comedy classic Spaceballs with our good friends Video Drew and Nerd Chronic from Passion Fruit. I forgot later in the episode to tell you what we will be doing next week. So as I said, today is our Spaceballs discussion. Next week we'll be returning to our regular schedule with Deep Space Nine Season 3 Episodes 11 and 12, Past Tense Parts 1 and 2. If I understand it correctly, yesterday, or the day before this recording, which is August 30th, as in yesterday was August 30th, apparently is the exact date and the exact year in which past tense takes place. I have not seen the episode's past tense, but I thought it was rather interesting that the date yesterday was the date in which the events occur in those episodes. I don't know why I wanted to mention that, but it sounded cool. So that will be next week's episode, and then next month, the end of September, will be our discussion of the 1999 classic, The Matrix. So, I hope you enjoy our episode on Spaceballs. Thank you for tuning in, and enjoy.
Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to Movie Night here on Random Trek. I am your faithful captain, Christopher Ingle, in my Winnebago, joined as always by my trusty first officer. He's not quite a Mog, but our guests have a Mog today. It's Brennan, the mystical Mar. Brennan, how you doing?
Best friend.
Huh?
No, best friend.
Yes, to finish out 80s sci-fi summer, we are taking a look at what I think was my first Mel Brooks film, 1987's Spaceballs.
Mm-hmm.
Brendan, was this one of your earliest Mel Brooks films?
I didn't actually see it till 2 years ago for the first time.
Wow. But today we are joined by someone I know by two people who enjoy Mel Brooks a lot, as we've talked about the works of Mel Brooks before. We are joined by our regular guests, Video Drew Grant, and Nerd Chronic. Eric, how we doing today?
Good. We got right. We got our own Mog or Mogwai. We got our
Mogwai, totally different film. It's okay.
She's her own best friend.
Yeah, you mentioned it. Yeah, we're Mel Brooks fans in general. Drew put Mel Brooks on the wheel a couple times in the old Schmodown days.
I used to be obsessed with Mel Brooks. I kind of forgot that I was obsessed with Mel Brooks, and but rewatching this movie today, I was like, oh, I saw this movie a ton of times. This and Men in Tights must have been like one of my favorite movies growing up, because all the jokes, I was like, it was all coming back to me. I was like, oh yeah, this movie's hilarious.
Yeah, it was the same way for me. I can't remember. I think this was the first, but it was this and Men in Tights. At roughly the same time.
I think the first one I saw was The Producers, actually. That was
wow. My parents love The Producers. Like the remake or the original?
The original. I have not seen the remake. I have no desire to see it.
Oh, wow. Wow. Well, as always for movie night, I turn the con over to Brennan.
Thank you so much, Captain. So this is going to be fun. As you said, the 1987 cult classic Spaceballs, which was a very interesting case because like a lot of movies that we love nowadays, it didn't get the best reviews when it first came out. In fact, I think that one of the most, unfortunately, not unfortunately, but unintentionally hilarious comments that Roger Ebert ever made about a movie was that Spaceballs didn't work because it was quote unquote too late to parody Star Wars. Talk about being myopic, being short sighted on that one. So, indeed, Spaceballs, which not only is a send up of Star Wars, but is a send up of many other franchises as well, including Planet of the Apes, 2001: A Space Odyssey, Aliens. We'll get to that in a minute, or Alien, I should say. We'll get to that bit in a minute, and even things like The Wizard of Oz. So it covers a lot of ground here. Starring, of course, an ensemble cast of faces familiar to Mel Brooks films and faces maybe not so familiar to Mel Brooks films. And as always, it has that winking at the camera mentality. So, in terms of the fact that the movie maybe wasn't as well received by the critics, it certainly has a fan following. And without asking you to give kind of a ranking or a rating of the film, where does it sit for you in terms of where you put it in your favorite comedies? We'll start with Drew and Eric.
Yeah, I think this is like pretty high for me. Like I was rewatching this today, and I was like, this is comedies are one of those things that it's hard over time for them to stay fresh. A lot of comedies don't the humor doesn't hold. We were watching Forgetting Sarah Marshall yesterday, and even that is a really good. I think a really solid comedy. But like there's some jokes there that they don't age great. There's some stuff battles that doesn't age great. But Mel Brooks, it's kind of his stuff can be hit or miss in terms of what he's choosing to satirize. But Spaceballs is one of the few that I think almost the whole thing just like holds up so well. Like it's pretty high up there for me. I'd say it's probably in like top 10, top 15 comedies.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think it's one that I frequently revisit, but it's one that I memorized really well. Even going into this before we rewatched it, I was like, oh yeah, I remember like a lot of stuff from it, just from when I was a kid, and just like culturally, that stuff that stuck with me. I do think like, yeah, it's funny that Roger Ebert said it was too late to satirize, do a parody of Star Wars. Actually, in a way, it was like almost like too early in a way, where like the obviously parodies were a thing back then, especially through Mel Brooks, but just the way Star Wars has been parodied, ad nauseum, at this point in pop culture.
Like Rick and Morty.
Yeah, like all of it. I think anyone who does a Family Guy, About Chicken, Rick and Morty, like they all have to sort of give credit to Spaceballs and like what it kind of like paved the way for.
I mean, Mel Brooks in general, like before there was Scary Movie, before there was like the Waynes, before there was any of that, like, sending up, or like even like the Smucker Brothers, and what's it, the Smucker Brothers?
The
Zucker Brothers, right?
Smucker, peanut butter and jelly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Same guys.
Yeah.
Before there was like any of that, there was like Mel Brooks, like kind of doing this kind of stuff of like the deep satirization of like a certain genre. And he, whether it's like Errol Flynn, like was it too late to do it for Men in Tights? That's like an Errol Flynn level.
Yeah.
Looking back, I think he just has such a keen eye, Mel Brooks, for like the dialogue, for what makes these things funny. I mean, the merchandise stuff from
merchandising.
Yeah, merchandise, like the Schwartz, like Power of the Schwartz, like all these comedy bits, like they hold up so well in a way that you're just like, that's amazing that none of this is problematic. The same way that so much humor is like problematic.
Yeah.
View it over a long enough period of time.
Yeah.
It's interesting to me because in the late 80s, Star Wars was, in the minds of a lot of people, Star Wars was dead.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And this, of course, is a few years before really took off in the early 90s.
Mhm.
And at this point, I can imagine that a lot of critics were watching this going, but Star Wars isn't relevant anymore. And they were true from a certain point of view. But a few years later, it would be proven to be not true.
Right.
Yeah,
Star
yeah.
Wars is relevant, and it has been for nearly 50 years. So.
You also remember like Siskel and Ebert, as much as we want to give them credit for like, especially Ebert for like always being on the ball. We were watching, we're seeing this summer a lot of people talking about the movie Longlegs and saying it was no Silence of the Lambs. Well, we went back and watched the original Ebert and Siskel review
Oh,
of Silence of the
Siskel,
Lambs.
yes.
And they're like, they hated it. They were like, this is no Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer,
Yeah.
which is like, that's a Michael Rooker film from the 80s that was a really kind of like exploitative, like weird, but it was like cinema verite style serial killer.
Ebert liked Silence of the Lambs, but Siskel didn't, and it was like
He liked it okay, but he was like basically like you can't compare the two films. Like Henry Portrait, the serial killer,
he's like
its own.
he's like one thing we could definitely agree on. It's
like,
no Henry Portrait of a serial killer. Like it's definitely not there.
yeah. And here we are 30 years later, and Silence of the Lambs is a classic.
It's the gold standard that we're like nothing else is Silence of the Lambs. So you know, not everything is well.
In terms of a comedy, this was so far ahead of its time, as a lot of Brooks's stuff was.
Mm-hmm.
This is dealing with franchise fatigue and commercialization in a way that we're complaining about those things today.
Yep.
Brooks was already talking about it in the late 80s. He knew what was going on. And it's hilarious. Even today, when I hear about, why are we bringing out a new MCO film? And I always think merchandising. Like he was way ahead of us. May we all hope we see each other in the sequel. Spaceballs 2, The Quest for More Money.
Which apparently there is a Spaceballs 2 in the works, apparently.
But there was also an animated series. Yes.
Oh my God!
Every movie had an animated series. I swear.
I'm such a sucker for the actual merchandising. I was like, was there a Spaceballs?
So there wasn't, and I'm sure we'll get into that. But we have George Lucas to thank for that.
Oh,
right.
That's part of the reason he hit so heavily on the merchandising is because George Lucas was again ahead of his time, merchandising on the film. Long story short, Lucas's deal was, yes, you can parody Star Wars all you want. I love it. I ask that you do no merchandising for Spaceballs. That's it. And I will give you my blessing.
So they can only make jokes about merchandising.
So they make jokes about it, which is why to this day you can't get Spaceballs merchandise. That was the deal with Lucas.
But I wonder, like, if he didn't just actually lose out on that, because what you could have done is like say, I just want a cut of the merchandising deal and let them market.
He could have made a lot of money off of that.
He made a lot of money off of Spaceballs merch.
Yeah,
that's true.
That flamethrower.
Yeah.
So, Chris, where does this rank for you as far as comedies?
So hard to say because for me, Mel Brooks is the king of comedy. This is where I learned my sense of humor from is all Mel Brooks films. And this, I again, it's 1 and 2. This and Men in Tights together, hands down, they're funny, they're referential, and then I only saw it when I was a kid on broadcast TV. When I finally saw it on tape and heard all the curse words and the things they were doing, I was like, there's more, the we ain't found line wasn't even on the broadcast stuff. Like I had never heard that when I was a kid.
But speaking of Star Trek connections, we'll get to that in a few minutes.
But this is high on my list. In terms, it's definitely the best sci-fi comedy, and it's right up there with like Paul. I love Paul, and again, Paul self-referential in sci-fi humor, and I love that. I enjoy that. So it's pretty high on the list, but it's Mel Brooks, so maybe I'm biased.
Yeah, I mean, because I just saw it for the first time recently, I haven't really had time to put it on any sense of how does it rank for comedies. I mean, my favorite Mel Brooks film. It's Young Frankenstein, because I think it holds up so well and does such a good, as Mel Brooks does, a great riff on an old, film. Yes, Young Frankenstein, all the Universal horror films. And Spaceballs definitely is following that trend And it definitely, for me, is, this might sound blasphemous, but not yet on the high end of Mel Brooks films for me. But maybe it will get there with repeated viewings.
Mhm.
So the plot of the film, which we'll start with, is pretty ridiculous and not really that important, I don't think. But just for the sake of recapping it, planet Spaceball is running out of air, trying to steal it from the nearby planet Druidia. Well, Princess Vespa of Druidia, set to be married, but she runs away, only to be almost captured by the evil Dark Helmet. Her father, King Roland, calls upon intergalactic space adventurer Lone Starr and his sidekick Barth to save her, which they do, and then things go insane.
Mhm.
And that's how it is. Well, I think in a movie like this, for me, I don't know if the plot really matters that much in a movie of this kind. Chris, would you agree or disagree with that?
For the most part, I agree, especially if you know the other franchises, you just go along with it.
Mm-hmm. Very much your space opera kind of story. Drew and Eric, thoughts on the
It is the
story?
plot of the movie.
Well,
It is the plot of the movie The Marvels.
yeah,
Is what
I
I
was gonna
wrote.
say
It's true.
we have,
It's
as
true.
retroactively we have now is also satirizing the Marvels
Yeah.
by
It's
plot,
true.
where they're
It's
trying to
very
suck
true.
out the oxygen from the planet. Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's no scene where they all sing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. She thinks nobody knows the trouble I've been.
Oh, yeah.
Well, okay, there's that, which is a great moment. Now
Huh,
we come to
she's a
probably the
baritone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
end of the part of the movie that probably people remember the most. And that's our cast of characters, which
Mhm.
is quite an insane group. Bill Pullman as Lone Starr. This is 10 years before he was president of the United States. It's President ever, if you ask me.
Mhm.
And of course, John Candy is Barth. And, John Candy, I swear, is just such a delight in movies.
Yes.
Yes, of course, you have Rick Moranis as the evil Dark Helmet.
He is also the best.
Yep.
The best. In fact, in fact, of all the characters in Spaceballs,
Yeah.
because it's a very memeable movie.
Yeah.
Dark Helmet is the most memeable of all the characters.
Well, and also it's funny because like Rick Moranis, I think we think about him as like a second, like he's like a, he's Ghostbusters. He's Honey I Shrunk the
Yeah,
Kids. He's
Shrunk
always
the
playing
Kids,
like
yeah.
kind of second fiddle. He's never playing like the main guy. Like he's never gotten like a. I don't think he ever like was a leading man so much as he was like the dad in Honey I Shrunk the Kids, or like the neighbor in Ghostbusters, or Seymour. I guess Seymour in Little Shop of Horrors would be the closest one.
Yeah.
But like this is the role for him that is like so against type for him to play like the bad guy, and it's so funny, and he's such a jerk, and like it's such a good role for him. He just kills it.
Yeah.
It is. And then of course you have Daphne Zuniga's Princess Vespa.
Mhm.
And Rivers, famously as Dot Matrix.
Not Matrix.
Yeah.
Basically being Joan Rivers as an android.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's basically what she's doing. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Brooks making an obligatory appearance in two roles in this kind, President Scrooge and Yogurt.
Yogurt.
Yeah.
And then you have a bunch of great character actors in smaller roles, such as George Weiner as Colonel Sanders,
Who is that? So what is he from? He looks so familiar.
Dick Van Patten as King Roland. Very, very
The Colonel.
it's always those faces that you recognize but could never name what they've been in.
Yeah, he had a very modern face, like the Colonel Sanders guy. I was like, I feel like I've seen him in
George
something.
Weiner was on things like Hill Street Blues,
Blues.
Okay.
Mhm.
The
Yeah.
Rabbi and a Serious Man.
Oh, maybe that's what I saw him in recently because I just watched A Serious Man, the Coen brother film.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe that's what it was. Because
Dick Van Patten is King Roland. He's definitely
So
got a
good.
very familiar face.
Now, you and I love this movie, Go find. He is in The Devil's Advocate. Go find him.
Oh,
Ooh.
wait. He's in the Devil's Advocate. He is the lawyer that's going against the guy. He starts choking. Is he the choking lawyer?
He plays the character
He's
of
the cop.
Meisel.
Or is he the FBI agent who's working on the case against Al Pacino?
I can't remember. I just looked it up and I was like, oh, that's why. Drew and I have talked a lot about Devil's Advocate in the past, so I know she knows it.
I
And
believe
I'm like, that's probably why.
Or maybe he's the judge. I know who he is now. I was trying to think of him. He kind of looks like the guy who plays, not to get off topic, he looks like the guy who plays the lawyer on It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Looks like that lawyer.
Yeah.
But we also have, of course, some famous small roles.
Yeah.
Winslow is the radio technician,
Great.
doing all
Great
the sound
cast.
effects in his mouth.
Mm-hmm.
John DeLuise as perhaps the most disgusting looking character I've ever seen in
But
a
his
movie.
character.
Pizza will take out
Pizza the Hut.
you.
It's
Pizza
we
the
were
Hut.
watching one of our favorite people, EOM reactions, do a reaction to this movie. He'd never seen it before. And he was just like kind of like dry heaving into his mouth whenever Pizza the Hut was on screen.
Mhm.
He's like, why does he sound so wet? This is such a funny.
And of course, we have other character, John Hurt, of course, making a very famous appearance as not again, getting another chest burster out of him.
Mhm.
Which reminds me, I just saw Alien Romulus. So,
All right.
Stephen Tobolowsky in a little role.
I caught him.
Yeah.
Well, and I went, hey, that's Stephen Tobolowsky.
I literally was like, is that Ned from Ned Ryerson?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Even small roles from like the voice actor Rob Paulson,
Mm-hmm.
one of the soldiers. And actors doing the voice of the Dinks.
Thanks. Yep.
Also, Trust McNeil, Phil Hartman, and Corey Burton.
Oh, Phil Hartman was in this?
Yeah, who also have
voice
gone on
the
to have
voices,
incredible.
yeah.
Oh, it's so funny.
And of course, we have to talk about it. The most famous liner, Star Trek's own Tim Russ. From the Desert Inn, where we will now permit you to quote the actual swear word. It's the most famous line.
Have you found anything yet?
You could say it.
We ain't found shit.
One of the most famous lines in film history.
Tim Russ was at a con recently, and they were asking, lines people ask, and he's like, you know what? I was on Star Trek for 7 years. I was just in Picard, and you know what they asked for? We ain't found shit. That's what people remember me for.
It's great. Great shirt.
The great visual gags of film history combing the desert, quite literally.
But it's so racist too, and we all know it with the little pick.
With the little comb, yes.
Oh, come on, Mel. But if anyone can get away with it, it is Mel.
Yeah. It's not. That's why it works, because it's not racist. It's pointing out a racial stereotype. Like, it's not playing into that racial stereotype. Like, it is commenting on it. Like, commenting on the culture of it. Like, kind of like Blazing Saddles isn't a racist movie, although like it has some homophobic things near the end, because it's not.
There's that, yes.
It's more like just trying to make the gay stuff the joke, whereas like Blazing Saddles as a racial commentary is not a racist movie, even though there's racist characters in it. And I feel like Spaceballs is doing a very similar thing.
It's showing that racism is stupid by laughing at it.
Yeah, it's like pointing out a racial like stereotype without playing into the darkness of that joke, like playing to like the nastiness of the humor.
As far as I'm aware, this is the earliest movie in terms of when it came out that I know Bill Pullman from.
Yeah, this is, I think, while you were sleeping, like we might have.
While You Were Sleeping was after this by a few years.
I just might have seen While You're Sleeping was first.
Yeah, and then of course President Whitmore in Independence Day. My favorite roles.
Casper.
The dad and Casper.
Dad and Casper, that's right.
I remember, thanks to my wife, as Gina Davis's husband towards the end of A League of Their Own.
Yeah,
right. That's right. He was in that.
Yeah, he's in a lot of. Oh yeah, that's the one where he comes in with the little walk. He's got the little.
That's right, because he was injured in the war. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He's in a lot of movies. I mean, like he was one of those early crushes I had. Like I think specifically because I was so obsessed with Han Solo. And like this movie to me is perfect because you just take Luke Skywalker out of the equation and you just make it a Han Solo story.
Yeah.
Like that's why to me this movie also just works as like a fantasy, like, you know.
Only one man would use raspberry jam on me.
Yeah.
Oh,
A Jewish princess? Come on, how am I not gonna love that line?
Yes.
funny, she doesn't look Jewish.
Yeah. I'll give you back your old nose.
Yeah. I mean, it's again, so like the comedy is not like anti-Semitic. It's just commenting on like, you know, like because he's himself Jewish, like it's
Yeah,
commenting
he's allowed
like,
to do it.
you know. So I think Mel Brooks again, like because I'm very like sensitive to, you know, I'm very sensitive to like humor that has not aged well. Like a lot of Apatow stuff doesn't age well. A lot of the like this is how I know you're gay stuff from this is from 40-year-old virgin stuff. Like it doesn't work for me anymore. I don't blame it. I don't like hold it against it that the comedy didn't age well. Like James Franco stuff doesn't age well in light of James Franco stuff.
Well,
but like,
James Franco doesn't age well.
that's what I'm saying. So like, but like, it's weird that like Mel Brooks kind of like remains above. Like some of his stuff doesn't age well, but like remarkably, a lot of his stuff, for as much like race and sex and you know, kind of like yeah, and a lot of like, you know, kind of lewd material that he deals with. You would think that this stuff would not age well, but he does it in kind of a classy way. Like Blazing Saddles is it's besides that third act like stuff with the gay stuff, I think it's like a pretty classy movie that deals with tough topics like of racial stuff. Like I think it's a pretty classy movie, and I think like this is a pretty classy movie. I give this like A+ for Drew comedy because it's not gross, it's not obscene, and it's like pretty funny.
Speaking of Blazing Saddles, here we have Mel Brooks yet again, a politician, evil President Scrooge, who has the most amazing salute I've ever seen in a film.
Which this is stupid, and I can't believe I did not figure this out. It's just an anagram of Brooks. How all these years did I not realize that?
Oh my goodness, I didn't realize that.
Wait, what is it?
Scrooge is just an anagram of Brooks.
Oh, that's really funny. I didn't realize that.
How in all lives of watching this so many times did I not catch that?
And he has a video screen in his bathroom.
Is it just backwards? I can't do
No, it's not fully backwards. It's rearranged a little bit.
What's his little symbol? I'm not gonna do it, but it's very funny. Like it's like a screw you, and then it's like turns around to like a little wave. It's
hilarious.
So funny. Maybe it's just a New Yorker type of humor too, but it's like so urban. Like it's so like you know, I don't know. It's very hard because like the scary movies don't like hold up for me. There's a lot of humor in those movies that I feel like now you're just like, okay, like it's like gross or like upsetting or like it just plays on like the physical barf humor.
Yeah.
With this, they might have like a joke about a barf thing, and they might have like a Pizza the Hut, but it's not. The humor isn't just based on the lewd grossness, and I don't know. I really appreciate that in this film.
Your full name, Bartholomew.
Bartholomew.
I love that.
Are you getting married? No, then stand over here.
Yeah, who's that guy? That guy was also familiar.
I believe his name is Ronnie Graham.
Do you? Yeah. Do you? Yeah. Good. Kiss her.
He reminded me of Jeremy Irons a little bit. He's got like a Jeremy Irons energy.
A little bit, yeah. I like that. And then a very interesting face he certainly has.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, the cast of this film, I think that it's a very, very well cast. And like a lot of Mel Brooks films, a lot of the humor comes from the ensemble.
Mm-hmm.
And the chemistry that the actors have with each other. So we come now to the script, which basically is just, there are so many funny lines in this movie. I don't even know where to begin.
We've already been quoting them, and we've only been on for 20 minutes.
So, Drew and Eric, what are some of your favorite lines from the film?
I mean, I think to me, the one that I've always remembered is like great, like when we got a Jewish princess, and then funny she doesn't look Jewish. That's got to be one of my favorite lines of all time because it's that's about my name.
Yeah. Yeah. I think obviously the one that I memorized most easily as a kid was like, I am your father's brother's cousin's nephew's former roommate. Yeah, like that thing.
What does that make us? Absolutely nothing.
Yes. I mean, that line is just, I mean, I had to memorize that for trivia.
Yeah.
A great line. But of course, everyone in the world is familiar with the original. No, I am your father, and so why not just take that and go crazy with it?
Mhm.
I use with my students regularly, just as a joke, because I get it. I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Funny, that's the same combination on my luggage.
Yeah.
What kind of idiot would put that on the luggage? That's
I,
my
as a
combination.
kid, realizing that meant that a lot of people did put that on their luggage. Like I realized as a kid, like I could open my parents' luggage. I could open up like a lot of lock boxes in our home because
Yeah,
they just never set it past the default setting.
and now that just became everyone's password for their computers.
Yeah, that became like every
Yeah, something-
default
yeah,
password
yeah.
for their computers.
Yeah.
Some of the other better, or not better, but ones I remember too are, you idiots, you've captured their stunt doubles.
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
Amazing.
that's a great scene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, sir, I didn't see you playing with your dolls again.
The
Yeah.
blender by Colonel Sanders is great. Like, he's great.
Or I the whole bit with asshole. They're all named asshole.
Oh, yeah.
That whole
And he has
bit.
I mean, I really like. I mean, everything that what's his name says that Mark Moranis says is just
Yeah.
such a. He's like, you've got to put your thing up. How do I know you're not making faces under there? And he's just like, and he just plays
Yeah.
off.
Fast forward from this. In fact, never bring it up again.
Ludicrous speed.
Ludicrous speed, where he goes like, he's like, how can there be a movie for Spaceballs? He's like, there's been breakthroughs in home streaming technology.
We're watching the movie now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When? Who? Yeah.
Which is hilariously pathetic if you consider that some movies get streamed the same day they get put in theaters.
I mean, I'll be honest. Mel Brooks, especially with the producers, predicted so many the scheme from the producers is basically what Warner Brothers is doing now for all their
that's a
properties.
good point.
It's like taking a dive for the tax purposes. Like
That's
he's
a good point.
He predicted a model of getting revenue in movies by creating bad products and then shelving them. Yeah, like he's
Of course, we've been jammed. That's a great line.
Mm-hmm.
My God, we've been jammed. The merchandising, like maybe the Schwartz be with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Remember, he open it before you eat it, which is like the funniest thing to say about a fortune cookie. Open it before you eat it.
And it's a little thing, but when Helmet tricks the princess out, and I do it to my kids. Fooled you.
Yeah.
It's so short, but it's just like tone and delivery.
Good, evil will always win because good is dumb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is definitely one of his most quotable films, I think, period. We can play with
Yes. And I can't think of anybody else in these roles, really.
No.
So Rick Moranis' Dark Helmet, I mean, there's no question. It's a role that he was born to play.
Yeah, although I would like not to recast him.
Let's do it.
No, I'm just saying I would like
I'd say Gosling is.
Well, I was gonna say Mel Brooks' humor is like sort of like a part of like our cultural past, like filmmaking and stuff like that. But it would be sort of like an opportunity, I think, for them to do another Spaceballs with that satirizes obviously like the prequel
stuff,
and the sequel and stuff like that with like modern comedic actors and stuff like that.
Would you like to say?
Not sure.
I was thinking Gosling would make a really good Lone Starr.
Yeah.
Yes. I agree there.
Taika Waititi feels like he fits very well, and like a Mel Brooks sort of.
Taika Waititi definitely.
Like Pedro Pascal, who's somebody who has like a really good sense of humor about themselves, but is already in a Star Wars property. So with Taika, like you put them in the parody. If you get Disney to sign off on it.
Yeah. No, and of course, I think Dark Helmet's introduction.
Yeah.
It's one of the great character introductions in a comedy I can think of. I mean, it's just. Can't breathe in this thing.
I can't breathe in this thing. When we were watching with the guy who was doing the reactions, he pointed out that I hadn't noticed that he's wearing a skinny little tie.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's so good.
This is so good. It's awesome. And Dot's line, I'm programmed to go off before you do.
Yes.
I'm a dad and I'm holding on to that one. Holding on to it tight.
There's Mel Brooks staples. Like that's kind of the same joke as the Robin Hood Men in Tights. Like, they know ding ding.
Yeah.
There's also like the watching the movie as it's happening, which they do in Blazing Saddles. They go into the movie and watch it on the big screen so they figure out where they're going.
Yeah, or script.
Oh, they're reading the script in Menentites. There's a breaking that fourth wall kind of element. But I mean,
it's very meta. Would you say that this is a meta movie? Would you say?
I think all his movies are like meta in a way that like
before meta was the thing.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I think that's exactly what he's doing. He's breaking the fourth wall and having cameras literally fall into the characters. He's having characters speak directly.
Lone Starr accidentally or Dark Helmet slashing one of the cameramen.
Oh, yeah.
It's a great moment. And of course, the stunt double moment is hilarious because they look nothing like the actors.
It's also like The Simpsons took a lot from I think Mel Brooks. Like when you think about Treehouse of Horrors and be like shinning. Like, careful, boy, you don't want to get sued. Like, that's very much what he's doing here.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there are so many quotable lines in this movie. It is insane.
Mm-hmm.
As I said earlier, this is one of the most memeable movies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And, of course, one of my favorite lines. Everybody got that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which is what I like to say sometimes, because it sums things up very nicely.
Mm-hmm.
So, come now, as we sort of head toward the end, is there physical comedy moments that you really like in this? Let's start with you.
I mean, the obvious one.
Eric, go ahead.
The obvious one is the xenomorph coming out and doing that. Hello, my baby, hello, my darling. Like that's like the best physical bit I think in the whole movie, and like the most iconic one that's sticks in my memory.
And the fact that they got John Hurt to come back for that moment.
Yeah.
Not just John Hurt, the other guy too. The guy, the black guy with the bandana. He's also from the original Alien movie.
Yes, is he in this?
Yeah. He's also in the scene. It's like him and there's another guy with him, but like it's the original guy. But I'd never seen Alien, and I wouldn't see Alien for another 2 decades before seeing Spaceballs. So I just thought it was just this weird part of Spaceballs that went super hard. Like there's just like this horrifying moment. I was like, that's not even in Star Wars. I just like didn't understand the context. I just thought it was this horrifying monster that came out with like a little number.
Yeah.
I was like, that just went too hard, but I also thought Pizza the Hunt went too hard.
So what did you think when you saw the scene in Alien?
I was like, oh, it's the guy. I was like, I understood then that they were doing a reference. Yeah. Like I didn't because that scene in Alien is so hardcore. It's not even the scene I think pop culturally we associate with aliens. I think we associate the Alien 3 or Alien 2 or Aliens thing where it's just like the xenomorph right in her face. That's like the kind of moment we associate. Same with the Terminator 2. We associate like the Terminator 2 stuff a lot more strongly with like the pop culture around Terminator.
Yeah, the leather jacket, the sunglasses.
The leather jacket, I'll be back, hasta la vista. Like that's the stuff we associate with Terminator. So I think a lot of the stuff we associate with Alien is actually Aliens or like a later Alien movie. So that chestbuster scene, it just seemed like it just was so hardcore. And I didn't have any contextual reference for it for years. Yeah.
Yes, and of course it had to happen at a space diner. Yay!
Yeah.
So it makes me never want to eat food at a diner again, but that's just
right.
I also think again,
never ordered the special.
Never
ordered the special. I'll get the soup.
And it is a testament to how much I like these movies and like how well I think that he does it. That I do think one of the funniest reoccurring gags is just how they're all holding their junk.
Oh,
like they holding their junk. I think the hand sign, like as a New Yorker, like that's just like such a thing my mom would do. She'd just be like, yeah, like that's like such a funny like screw you up yours, like hello.
I mean, there's a lot of great physical comedy here. Chris, what's any of your favorite physical gags?
The escape from the prison. Again, you captured their stunt, watching them jump through. That's a lot of fun. And even the goofy fight between Lone Starr and
that's so good.
Is great. No, I got it twisted up in yours. Okay, just put
He's like, how dumb are you?
You fell for it again. That whole bit is so good.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it to death.
When the camera runs into their helmet.
Oh yeah.
The camera goes right into his face.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Or when he goes when he goes right into the dashboard and he's like, well, let's take 5, smoke him if you got him, and he just falls.
Yeah, and then he
the ludicrous speed bit with him, not getting in his seatbelt. That was great. It's wire work, but I love that.
His head, his little safari head that has the smiley face on it.
Yeah.
Michael Winslow doing his bit, sound
Yeah.
effects.
Oh, it's so good.
That moment.
Yeah, I can't do
There's
it.
so many funny moments in this movie that just I don't even know where to begin, it's just so many. And then of course the whole thing of Baseball One turning into a giant nade that looks like the Statue of Liberty.
Yeah.
Which then of
Transformers.
course ends with the head of the Statue of Liberty landing on the beach.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
There goes the
And
planet.
saying, there goes the planet. I mean, it's absolutely genius.
It is. It's really good.
And I also love just how funny that when you first see Spaceball 1, well, so one of the most famous shots in all of cinema is the Star Destroyer
Hmm.
in A New Hope going overhead.
Well,
Right.
This takes that and stretches it out like to an
Such a good
insane.
gag.
Yeah.
well, you
Length.
take it even further back to the fact that even Lucas was trying to meet what 2001 did.
Yes,
And
that's
that's
true.
what they were really going for, was this, man, this takes forever.
But Spaceball
I mean,
1 just keeps
We
going.
break for no
and
one,
going.
with that on the back. That was great.
It's also like the score I think is doing a lot of the heavy lifting here because it's so
Yes.
tedious. Like
Yeah.
you're just like wait, because kind of like the way the 2001, like you can kind of knock it a little bit for like being a pretentious movie and like
Well, you
it's just like,
could. You could.
it's just like it's so after a while it's just like so lugubrious. Like it's just relentless. And I think this really like the way the music just keeps looping over. And
Well,
it's
it's
like
interesting you mentioned the music.
yeah,
Right.
That's sort of our next idea, and I think this actually has quite a good score.
it's pretty good.
Like,
I've got this
considering
song
it's
in
a
it, like, all
comedy,
getting out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
considering it's a comedy and a parody, it takes its score very seriously.
We didn't mention it all, but like
the
the
main
theme they're all
theme-
exiting is really good.
Yeah.
The main theme is terrific. The love theme is actually quite romantic.
It's very good.
The Spaceball 1 slow theme it's hilarious.
He's good with music. I mean, look, all the Mel Brooks stuff, the producers, like the Springtime for Hitler stuff. I mean, he's always been very, very good with music.
Blazing
this all kind
Saddles
of
has a great score.
Yeah, he's got a really good ear for music. I would say that he is as much a musical parodist as like someone like Seth MacFarlane. Or
So the
like,
thing that people forget with Mel Brooks is that he originally went to school for music.
yeah,
The guy is
Mhm.
he was not a movie writer. He was not a filmmaker. He was a musician. And when he joined the military, he worked in radio and communications, and that's what he did. And eventually played music in during the tail end of World War II.
I just realized this is also why he was able to get John Hurt to do the scene in Spaceballs when you would think you can't get John Hurt to it. It's because he produced Elephant Man. He's the reason David Lynch got Elephant Man is because he produced it, and that's what won John Hurt or got him.
In fact, John Morris, the guy who did the score here, also did Elephant Man.
That's really funny.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
really funny.
And many other movies
That's very funny.
besides. But it's incredible that I think the music really, like it does in Star Wars, the music is kind of the secret sauce here.
I agree.
It kind of holds it all together, and it really takes itself seriously for being comedy.
It's the for score wise, it's that combination between original compositions done by John Morris and then mixing in 80s rock.
And
Yeah.
mixing in Colonel Bogey's March from Bridge on the River Kwai.
Oh yeah, the dink 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 dink
Ding,
dink.
ding, 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 ding.
But I love 1 minute we're listening to a score and then all of a sudden I've got Bon Jovi's "Raise Your Hand" and you
Yes.
see John Candy shaking his butt to it. It's funny. I love it.
And of course, Vespa listening to music, and then she takes off the hair
The
buns.
headphones, yeah. A lot of diegetic, a lot of play
Yeah.
with diegetic noise
Yeah.
of that film.
And then she has the Princess Leia buns, but then she takes it off and
Their earphones, yeah.
gets her earphones, which is hilarious.
It's actually so very like I think they have a really good like we mentioned it kind of quickly, but like they have a really good romance. Like this is kind of like up there with the Han Leia romance. Like their chemistry is really good. You feel like Bill Pullman's a very sexy guy during this
Yeah.
period. Like
Yeah.
you feel this movie in a way that I was like, oh yeah, you don't really need Luke Skywalker as a character.
I buy him as the Han and Leia with the Han and Leia
Yeah.
types. I'm not doing this for money. I'm doing this for a crap ton of money.
Yeah. I was also just like the guy we were watching. You know,
1 million
like-
space bucks.
yeah, he's pointing out that he's dressed like Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
Like he's not
Yeah,
dressed
that's
like
true.
he's he's not dressed like Han Solo. He's dressed like specifically Indiana Jones. So he's just playing with that Harrison Ford sexy archetype from that period of time.
And the fact that the Eagle 5 is a Winnebago. That cracks me up.
Yeah.
Not even a double wide.
Why is that not a Lego set?
Oh my god.
I want it as a Lego set.
Yeah, the Winnebago Lego.
Merchandise.
I wonder if Lego would be okay with using that bumper sticker, though.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's a planet.
Make it an 18+ set. We're good.
It's true. It is a planet. Newsflash. It is a planet.
Mm-hmm. Still is. Still same as it ever were.
Yeah.
Yep. So now we come to the spectacle. Now this movie being a parody, it's not so reliable on realistic special effects. It certainly uses a lot of special effects, and they're very interesting and very creative, particularly the Spaceball 1 being a transformer
That's very cute.
is very clever. I think that from a visual perspective, it's not the visual effects that really stand out, but they get the job done, and they do fit within kind of that goofy world. Drew, Eric, what do you think about the visual effects here?
I mean, the visual effects, and the practical effects, the set design and everything, obviously have a lot to build on from Star Wars, trying to fit that aesthetic, but also be a nice parody of it.
And like, way to go with that chestbuster. That chestbuster scene was impressive because it looks
It
just
was. Yeah.
I'm saying, they don't, they obviously pay a lot of homage to it, but still put in like the work to make it sort of like aesthetically consistent, but like not like they obviously have to put in like a a huge budget, but like make it funny with like the budget that they have to do it.
Yeah, like they're not using CGI, so none of it looks like fake or impractical. They're all things are practical in it, so the spectacle of it really works to me. I was gonna say the scene where they're all exiting out of the head of the ship.
Yeah.
Like that is one of the funniest moments. They got the giant bear suit. Like it is
Oh my
definitely like
gosh.
a circus.
I'm the
It's like a
bearded
spectacle.
lady.
Yeah.
Yeah. Them going plaid. That's like
They're gone to plaid.
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, Chris, what do you think about the visual effects here?
It's a lot of fun. It's great. I think it has aged pretty well. You could tell that they're mostly practical effects, and I'm okay with that. I love practical. Makes me very happy. And Mel Brooks is known for doing things on the cheap. That's what he does.
So, yeah, the budget here is $22 million.
And they did all that on 22 million. I'm impressed.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, I think it really gets the job done. I think it fits the world perfectly. I think if the visual effects had been more realistic, it might have taken away some of the comedy in a way. Like it wouldn't have fit this world.
It's kind of like it's the way that like Robot Chicken or Family Guy or Simpsons works well because it's animated, so you can understand there's a shorthand for like, oh, you don't need to look like Star Wars because we're animating it. It's like the idea of like the visual language of a satire is that it doesn't have to be the level of the original thing that's satirizing, especially if it's something like a space opera. But for that fact, it looks really, really good. Like
it does. Well, it's kind of like how Dracula Dead Loving It doesn't measure up to Bram Stoker's Dracula.
I mean, yeah.
It's not supposed to. It's really not supposed to.
I mean, yeah. One could argue that Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula, didn't live up to its own standards of what it was supposed to look like. But
yeah.
So the models, by the way, we're talking the spectacle were created by Grant McCune, who also created models for both Star Wars and Star Trek.
There we go.
That makes sense.
Yes.
The impressive thing was Alien.
And so that kind of brings us kind of the end. I mean, there's so much we could talk about in this movie. Certainly, as I said, it didn't get the best reception when it came out. But it has become a cult classic that, to those listening, memes. I mean, there are so many memes that came out of this movie.
Yeah.
In fact, you could argue this was memeable before there was such a thing.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, you could argue that.
And I like to use a lot of these memes. There's some great lines that fit all occasions. And, the idea of the Schwartz, is pretty much the Force.
Mm-hmm.
But the interesting idea of calling it something more Jewish.
It's also like the idea of it's like the shinning. It's like not using it. It's like it's a sort of tongue-in-cheek way of being like a nod to the IP. Like we can't copyright infringe on the IP. So it's like yogurt, like the Schwartz, not the Schwartz, not the Force, the Schwartz. Like
Yeah.
it's like
The Force?
yogurt
No,
and
He
the
got
everything.
the upside. I got the downside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I do also like the fact that they're using rings to fight with lightsabers.
That's very and they're
That's
again
kind of cool.
holding it over their junk. It's very
Yeah.
funny. I don't know. I know it's like it's silly humor, it's like kind of blue humor, but I think the way that Mel Brooks does it is classy.
Yeah.
It's a classy version of blue humor.
Now, one thing I wonder about, so this movie's rated PG.
Oh wow, yeah.
There's one F-bomb in it. The next year, Beetlejuice does the same thing. It's rated PG, but yet he drops the F-bomb.
Yeah.
Even though PG-13 did exist in these years. I find that very interesting.
What was Guardians 3? Was that PG-13 or PG?
PG-13. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Has to be.
Yeah, and Beetlejuice is PG, but yet he snuck that famous F word in.
Well, I think just the code was different. Like, people, what the idea of what PG-13 was supposed to represent was less cursing and more, at that time, sex and violence.
And particularly violence, yeah.
It depends on what era you're in. Like, the coding is more like, oh, well, PG-13 can be like anything.
Nowadays, this movie would be PG-13. Nowadays. Yeah, so that brings us to the end of our discussion. Is there anything that we haven't talked about yet that you wanted to mention really quick, Drew and Eric?
No, I think we got it, man. Like, I really love this movie.
Yeah.
I thank you again for making us kind of rewatch
Yeah.
it.
So what are your
revisit it.
final thoughts on this film as we come to the end here?
Just like we said, it's a classic. It was a lot of fun to revisit. We hadn't either of us watched it in a long time, but getting to rewatch for this was, like it just brought back so many things that we have forgotten, but like we're still dormant in the back of our minds.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Chris, your final thoughts on this film?
This is a classic. It's not perfect, but it's perfect for me.
Yes. Yeah, and for me, I'm fairly new to this movie, but I definitely see that this definitely is poking fun at all my favorite things, and so I enjoy it. Like, hey, I know what that is. I know what they're talking about. And also making fun of the tropes of sci-fi, which is always fun to have a laugh about. So that is our look at Spaceballs, which is certainly one of the favorite films of 1987. A lot of people. 87 was an interesting year. It was also the year of Princess Bride, which is another slightly meta comedy. So quite a year for those kind of films. So, Drew, Eric, where can we find you?
Well, that's a great question. You can find us always at Passion Fruit. We have an interview coming up with a former Schmodown. I think we can tease this out. We're having an interview come up with Dan Murrell next week. So you can find us over at our Passion Fruit YouTube channel. Passion Fruit, what is it? Passion Fruit for...
Passion Fruit content for creators. Passion Fruit for us. Yeah.
Passion Fruit for us. Passion Fruit for creators.
Yeah.
We're all over the internet, a bunch of different things, but just check us out, Passion Fruit. We are a website that's for content creators.
Yeah.
We have newsletters, we have videos, we have a bunch of stuff. Eric has Reactorverse.
You guys are very thorough, and I enjoy your channel very much.
Thank you. Yeah, we're doing a lot of fun stuff. We have we're trying to just be like a hub and a network resource for people who make stuff on the internet and are trying to kind of make a living.
Yeah.
And as somebody who makes stuff on the internet, I'm glad you have your channel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's very helpful. Chris, where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitch and Twitter at cingold1984.
Now, technically, I guess I should hand the shit back to you.
No, I'll let you handle it. You got it. You gotta dock us in manually.
All right. Okay. I don't want to think too much about that. But anyhow, you can find me on X at Brennan Mystical, on Instagram and Threads at Brennan Blue. You can find this podcast under Page Turners They Were Not on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify. So, Chris, let's begin our concluding lines.
Yes. Kapla. I'd live long and prosper.
May the Schwartz be with you, and peace and long life.